Okay, so on the screen, pardon me, I'm home. There are some noise at the background. I hope it doesn't really disturb you. So on the screen, yes. So would you want me to start the whole thing from scratch? Hello? Precious. Hello? Can you hear me?
Doc,
Jonathan.
hello, Doc.
Yeah, Precious. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. Can you tell me what your problem is so that we can, or if you want, let us share your screen so that we can go through it together. If not, let me continue with what I have. Um, if you can tell me exactly what the problem is, or you want me to start from scratch. I think the network is, I don't know if,
Hello, Doc. Please,
all
can you
right.
see my screen?
Yes, I can see your screen. Yeah, this is perfect.
Yes. So this is where I've got into. My issue is in between this scene and then this scene, the open and the close scene. How do I start the coding? That is only my concern.
Okay. Let me see if I can. I'm requesting for a remote access to your PC. So grant me access.
Uh,
It will come on your screen very soon.
okay. Let me approve.
Okay. Let me just. Okay. If you had had time to read or to go through the video I created, I'm sure this would have been very easy. But it's okay. I'm going to go over it so that we can start. Now from here, those of you who just joined, we are viewing Precious's screen right now. Let me just. Yes. So the first thing I said was we need to get the basic HTML skeleton, which we normally term as the boilerplate. So that is what Precious has done. Now, everything that we're doing here is actually from the body, from here to here. All those information, everything that goes inside the body is what we will call a scene. To be able to have a VR environment, we always need to create something we call a scene. So that is because we are using A-frame, we start with a scene. So first of all, we would create an A scene so that we can create our object and put it in that particular scene. We only have access to the VR environment if we have a scene. So I begin by just typing A-scene. The moment I type this and I press enter, it gives me the opening and the closing brackets of the scene environment, which is the VR environment, where I'm going to put all my objects. So this is very key. So once I'm done, I've been able to do this, it means I have access to start the work itself. I'm ready to start working in web VR or in the virtual reality environment. If I don't create an A scene, then it means I'm not ready to create to work with the web VR. I always have to make sure I have my A scene. And before doing all of this, I need to make sure I have referenced my A-frame.javascript file, which is already located over here, which I think he has already done that. So from here, that is where we start creating our objects. And I said the basic objects that we normally have is what we call the primitives. The primitives are the basic building objects that we can use to build our models or build our things that will go into our scene. And an example of a basic model is the A box. So for instance, in creating a primitive, the first basic primitive that I can use is by calling what we call the A box. So I just type A box, and it means I'm ready to create a box. So this, and the moment I type A box and I press enter, it creates the A box for me. So the A box in actual fact, this is an object which is in my scene. We normally call them as entities. So I have my A box. Of course, it can also have some properties or components like the color that you can give it and so on. So from here, the moment I type A box, then it always has to be closed again. Any primitive that you create or any objects that you create in the scene have to have an opening bracket, an opening of that particular object and a closing of that object. So in this case, this is the opening of the object. And this is the closing of the object. And the closing is done by using a / and the name of that particular primitive. So in this case, this is what we have. So when I save this object and I try to run it in the browser, I don't know if I can get onto his browser. I don't know if this is your second screen. If you can share with me your second screen itself, I think I'll be able to maneuver between the two. I need to go to the browser to start looking at the objects.
Okay, let me share again.
All
Let me
right.
share.
Okay. I wish I can finish with you so that I can help some of you in your AI machine learning things.
Doc, Doc, do you have access now? Please check.
All right. I think that's great. All right. Okay. So um, I think we can pick any of the browsers and just, all right. All right. So now all I need to do is to access my scene. All I need to have type is the local host. Forward slash, I think his is A-frame. All right. So this, the moment I'm able to see this, then it means my VR is ready. I can work with it. Now I've created an A box. So the A box is a basic primitive. In viewing it, I need to make sure I bring it in place. And you can see this is the A box. This is the box that is available. So for instance, if I say, let's create, let's say a table, then it means we can still come out with use an A box, give it the right dimension, and use it to create our A box, to create our table. So basically, let me just get it right so I can work with you guys. Just a minute. All right. So this is our box. I'm not really going to put in much information in here, but the last time I think we talked about how to, put in some colors to some of the boxes in there. So for instance, assuming I want to create a chair, for instance. Okay, it looks like I still don't have access. Sorry, it looks like my internet at home is misbehaving. Precious, if you can, please share me your screen again. Okay. I'm sorry about that. My internet at home has a little issue. That's how come I'm unable to, um, I'm getting these errors. So for instance, if I want to create maybe the first, maybe the chair, what I can do is to, first of all, create an A box. So for instance, I have an A box, and within that, I can have the height or the width of that box specified in a way. So in this case, the chair can be in the form of maybe a flat table with the legs positioned beneath. So I can have a position like using the position attributes. I can have it represented in this way. Now the position is in X, Y, Z. So 0 for X, possibly 0.0.5 for Y, and 0 for Z. And with that, I can give it a width on how wide the table possibly should be. And that could be in the form of, let's say, maybe 1. And I can give it a height of maybe 0 points. Just a minute. I don't know what's happening. Yes. A minute, please. Sorry, my PC keeps giving me issues, so I'm just trying to do it all over again. So I'll begin with the creation of these ones quickly. Um, the importation of the script file, which we will use for the A-frame. In doing that, we have to reference the part of that particular script, and that is what we have in the script folder. Then right after it, script. And in there, we also have the A-frame. We have the A-frame file also situated in there. All right, so once we're done with this one, the next thing is to create our first primitive or component. Primitive, which is the ascene. And ascene is what gives us access to have the VR environment. So it is from here that all our objects will reside. So we'll begin by creating our objects. So now in HTML, in general HTML, there are ways to create what we call we normally term them as comments. Every good programmer has a way of commenting their work. And in commenting, it makes it easier for them to, for anybody who picks their codes to understand what is going on in there. So in this case, within that, I can create possibly an environment where I can push in all the information in there. Now, there is a primitive that we normally call the ASCII. The ASCII primitive is what gives us access to the sky. Now, over here, I'm going to create some folders which I have already given you in the on the website, on the VLE. So that folder contains so many files that we can use to work in our scene. So I'm quickly going to bring in some of those files in this particular work so that we can call on them to use for our projects. So the first one that I'm going to call on is the ASCII. So in that case, in there, I have a folder called textures. This folder called textures, from here you can see there is a folder called textures. And in there, these are plenty textures that I want you to use, possibly for the creation of whatever you want to do. That is for the project itself, which you are working on. Now the textures, if you click on any of them, you get to see that this is a brick. We can use some of these bricks as examples of our tiles. Just like when you go to somebody's house, we have a brick tile and all of that. These are all pictures that we can use as bricks for our websites or for our environment. So this is the green grass. There are lots of them. This is a Milo tin. I said we should have a Milo tin, for instance. So we need to create something like that. So it means if we have a texture like this, if I'm going too fast, please let me know. I want all of us to be on the same page. This is a Milo texture. This is also another Milo texture which we can use to wrap on our scene. This is a tea color thing. These are few textures that we can use in our scene. Now, because the last time I said, anytime you are creating an object or you're creating a file in the web environment, specifically for the VR environment, you need to have an index.html file, which I have in there. So this is the A scene. First of all, there are some few things that we call, and we normally use in organizing our file. An example of that is what we call the A asset. So A asset is also an entity which we can use to organize the file in our folders. So all the files that we have over here in the textures folders, we can use it to organize our file by using what we call the A assets. So in this case, these files, they don't reside in our VR environments. So we don't necessarily have to put them in our A scene. So in that case, we can create what we call the A assets in here, inside the body, to save all the files that we're going to use for our projects. So in my case, I'm going to create this file, the entity called A assets. So the asset is more like the things that you have. So A assets, once I have this created, I can now put in all these files and then call on the files whenever I need them. Please, if I'm going too fast, you let me know. The project that we are working on. So an example is if you are creating maybe a Milo tin, we need to have something we call textures, which is going to wrap around our cylinder that we will create. The last time we learned how to create an A cylinder, we learned how to create an A box, we learned how to create an A cone. All these are things that we can do with in our work. So what I'm saying is, when you create a normal cylinder, it normally probably will come with maybe a color of white, a color of black, or a color of maybe green, whichever color that you choose. But because I said come out with a Milo tin, then it means you need a texture or a material that looks like the Milo tin. In this case, you see this picture looks like a Milo tin. It's a Milo picture that we have here. So when we create an A cylinder, we can wrap this particular picture around the cylinder to make it look like that cylinder is a Milo tin. Please, am I making sense here?
Yes, Doc, you are.
All right,
But
thank
Doc,
you. Yes.
the texture, how did you get the texture? Because I've come to the A-frame.js, but then how did you get the texture?
Great. I think that is a good point. Let me just go onto the website over here. So look, let me go to the e-learning platform. Just a minute. I have loaded a ton of these textures on your page. Let me see. Um, okay. I think you don't have it, but I'm going to load it for you. So those textures, a minute, just a minute. Let me just show you this so you can see it and appreciate it better. I will load it on your page. But generally, if you want to create any of those textures, like the Milo tin, you can just go to Google and say picture of Milo or something. Milo or Ideal Milk or any of those. And Google can give you some examples. You see, these are all pictures of Milo. So for instance, a texture is just a picture. So you can click on this one and download it and now put it in your work and use it. So this is an example. There are lots of them that you can get when you go to Google. So the texture folder that I have, I will upload it for you guys to also possibly use. You can still add more to it. Whichever thing that you think will be okay for you, you can still add it and it will work. All right, so let's quickly go back again. I will load it on the page for you so that you have the access to that particular folder file too. So what I'm doing here, when you take your time and you revisit the little video that I've given you, you will see some of virtually everything that I'm talking about is there. But of course, we've planned to go sequential using concentrating on the practical itself. So let's continue with what we're doing. All right, so this is a simple texture. There are lots of them. You can download some of them online. You can go to Google and download some of them. There is this Sketchfab tool where you can get some of these textures. All these things, I spoke about them in the video. All right, so now once we are here, I'm saying the assets is...
Hello, Doc.
Yes.
Doc, please, with the texture, so when you get it, then you only get the picture. You can come and copy and paste it in what you have.
Okay, so now...
Like downloading it, for instance, if there is a picture that you don't have it in your texture, and then you go to Google and you download the picture, what do you do next? Put it
inside. Yes, so for instance, with the work we are doing now, you can see on my screen, I have the script folder, I have a texture folder. So if you have any picture, maybe where you are, the Milo tin, the milk tin is probably Kaneshie milk, or a different type of milk. You can use this as a texture. So in here, you can see these are the textures. So for instance, if you check out, you can take a picture of the type of milk that you probably use. Then you use that one, make it a little uniform. Then you can use it to wrap around the cylinder. That is how, the Milo tin and the milk tin, they are all cylinders. So it means when we create an A cylinder, we can wrap around the A cylinder with any of these textures and it will work. All right, so now inside your A-frame, just like how you created your scripts, you can have textures and put in your materials in there. Can we continue?
Yes, Doc.
All right, let me just move on quickly. So from here, what I'm saying is, because we have now introduced textures that is going to contain pictures of what we will use to wrap around the primitives that we've created, we need to by way of organizing it, we need to find a way to put it in something we call an A asset. And this is how to create an A asset. The only thing you have to do is just type A, because you are dealing with A-frame. Anything that you start, any primitive or entity that you start creating, you begin with an A. So in this case, A assets. Assets is what you have. So in this case, I create A assets, and within it, I'm now going to create each of these, call on each of these pictures, which I'm going to use as my texture. Now, because all these are pictures, you can see they are virtually all of them are pictures, with the exception of the last one. Because all these are pictures, in A-frame or in HTML, pictures are called images. So we use the element called img. Anytime the browser sees something called img, then it means it's an image. So these are all pictures. They are all images. So I'm calling img. So the moment I type img, then it means I can press enter. Then from here, you can see it is trying to ask me where SRC stands for the source of that picture, the source of that image. Where is the location of the image? In our case, the image is located in the folder called textures, and the image is also that we call on that particular image. So the folder called textures contain all these images. Of course, the ones that appeal to you are the ones that you probably will use in your work. So in this case, the SRC is the source. Where is the file located? It's the same as the script over here. So from here, you remember when we were calling on the A-frame file, we said SRC is equal to S script. So this is it. So SRC means it is in a script folder, which is here, and it is in here. But in our case, we are dealing with a picture or an image. That is how we are using the element or the tag called img, which is for image. SRC, which is an attribute, represents the source of that particular picture that we are looking for. So in our case, the file that probably we are looking for is maybe a brick. So we can call it, it is in a folder called texture, and you can see all these are files that we have in our texture folder. So I can select the first one. The alt ID is most of the time used as an alternate name, assuming the picture does not display. A text will be displayed. Because this is not a programming class, I'm not going to use that. So we will miss this one. And ideally, people who are visually impaired can rely on the alternate name to make, to know in case the picture is not on your server, it will tell you this is a brick, So that makes it easier for the visually impaired people to hear that on the website, there is a website that we have. At this particular position, there is a picture called brick. So they have an idea that a brick is located at maybe a corner of your screen or so on and so on and so forth. Now, from here, I would want us to, now, we create something we call an ID. An ID is uniquely going to identify this particular brick. So in future, we don't need to type all of this thing, but we can just call on the ID and it will work for us. So in that case, I would have an element called ID, and in there, I can call it, let's say, brick. So this is the ID. So in future, if I want to call on this image, the only thing I'll have to do is to type ID as brick, and it means I'm calling on that particular, I'm calling on this particular image. I don't need to type all of this. So we can create all these things and put it in our assets folder. The next thing that we can do is create another one. So we can create the same thing for all the pictures that we think we need to create with our objects. So we can do that. All right, so in this case, I first of all have my break. I can have the second break, which is this one. I just want to call all of them and put them down. So break 2, then I'll give it maybe an ID of 2. So that is the break I'm looking for. The next one is if I need to call on break 3. And mind you, those are different pictures that we can use for our projects, just for our projects to look very nice. So I'll call on all of them. I just want to find a way to organize it. Please let me pick this call briefly. All right, sorry about that. Let me just, so the asset is going to hold all the files that I have in here. So as many files as I have, I can put them in there. That does not mean this is so necessary. It is not so necessary, but it helps in organizing your files. Somebody can just go straight ahead and call, if I want to wrap it around my cylinder, I can just call the image and wrap it on it. But the moment I arrange and organize it, I know that anytime I go into my A assets, I'm able to have all my textures in there. So break 3, from there, I think we have break 4. I can call this one too as break 4. And in there, I have another one called brown grass. So instead of break 4, I'll call it brown grass, which is this one. Then I can give it an ID that will uniquely identify that one. So let's say brown grass, I can call it, let's say, hay or BG, brown grass, any of them. But whichever name that we use, we have to always remember the name. So brown grass, you can still call it the entire thing, brown grass, but we just want to shorten things to make it easier for us. We can have another one called the floor, exactly like the floor, this one, 360, and we can call it a floor or small f, any of them. Now, the ID, if you are using small letters over here, it is case sensitive. So if you use small letters here and you are calling it, you have to make sure you call it using the right letter. If it is capital letter that you are using, use capital letters. So I'm going to maybe horse over here for us to just take our time to start creating our objects. Then I'll come back again to start creating the other objects. So as and when it is necessary, I'll come and add the assets to it. So let me just maintain what we have basically here, and we can come back again if you want to add more of the assets. So for now, we assume this is what we are looking and we want to work with. Now, once we have this done, of course, I said anything that we want to see in our scene has to fall within the A scene. All these things will not show in our scene. So it means it is not going to be part of what we're looking out for. Now we have something we call, in HTML, you can create in HTML, you can create comments. Comments are ways to, make it easier for people who are going to who are going to learn your code. For instance, the way I'm typing right now, this is a comment. So when you get this particular file and you are working on it, the moment you see this, you get to know that this is a comment, and it's not really part of the work itself, but it's going to guide you to know what I'm trying to create. So that is what we call a comment. In programming, we normally term them as comments. So I can also have over here, for the assets, I can also have over here another comment. And this is how we declare comments. A comment and say maybe this is going to hold the textures. So all textures will be here. So this is going to, so it means, and that this is a comment. In our programming, this will not show. So this is a comment, this is a comment. I want us to create a sky that is going to make our scene look more realistic. So I'm going to pull out this over here. We already have our scene. So when I come in here and I try to refresh the page for our scene. If I refresh the page, so this is the environment. Now I want us to create a sky for it to look a little more realistic. So in doing that, I'm going to call on this an entity called a sky, or a primitive called a sky. So a sky. So this is a simple primitive that we have. Then generally, now I have an a sky created. We need to create something that's will make the sky look more realistic. And the good thing is we have a picture here which looks like a sky. So this is how we want our sky to look like. So that is our a sky. So in that case, I'll come back again over here. Looking at the textures over here, we don't have a sky texture included in our texture assets, where we have all the textures. So what we can do is to create that particular, to call or create that particular asset and make it visible for us. So textures, and this time around, I'm going to call the sky texture, which is this one. And of course, I'm going to give it an ID, which is unique to it. So I can call it SK or sky. I don't want you to get confused. I'm probably using SK so that you don't get confused. It's the same as this one. So I'll call it SK. So in this case, I can call on this particular file. Now, at this particular site, what I can do is the A-sky is a primitive. Then I can create the source, which is the SRC for this particular A-sky. And as I said, the source is the location. So the source, I'm going to use this particular file, which I have in here. So instead of calling the entire texture over here, because I've declared it up here, I can just call this particular SK by using the pounds sign. So in that case, I can call this one. Possibly I can call it SKY. We can still use Y. But this time, in calling it, I'll just use the pound symbol or the hashtag to call that particular file. This is also another sky. There are a lot of skies that we have in here. So we can use any of those skies to work. This is also an example of a sky. I think this looks more realistic. So let me just rename this one and call it Sky 2. Just to Sky 2. This picture looks a little more beautiful. So let me use this one. So when I come in here, I can call on that particular Sky 2 and use it for my background, for my atmosphere to look more realistic. So I just call the sky, which is this one, using the A-sky primitive. When we go back again to our browser and I refresh the page, let me make sure I've called the files properly. A-sky. The source is this. Okay. The sky, let me rotate this on the y-axis so that you can, I think, rather see it well. Give it a rotation of, let's say, 0. Let's say 60 and 0. Just a minute. Let me make sure I have the file. Oh, IG. Okay, it's Sky JPG. It doesn't have E here. This one does not have E. There's no E in there. So I think I made a mistake with that one. All right, so you can see this looks a little more like the sky that we know. All right. If we had used another type of sky, like the second one, if I had used this one, this sky, SKY plus JP, I can call this one, let's say sky 2. So this one, let me use this one as sky 2, and this one as sky. So when I call this one, and I come in here, you can see this one, because the file was too small, it is trying to repeat the sky for us. And this is not the best of practice. That is how come I use the bigger file, which is this one. And that sky is quite big. This sky is bigger than this sky. So this is more appropriate to use in our scene. All right, so we can go back again. So I'll call this particular sky, which is the sky 2, which is quite big. So in calling it, I create my A sky, then source, then S2. So that is the sky that I'm going to use. And this is a rotation that we can have, of course. We are just rotating the sky on the, this is, we are working in 3D environment. So it is X, Y, Z. So this is the S component, this is the Y component, and this is the Z component. That is the depth of it. This is how high it should go. This is the X axis. Of course, I can have all these also removed and it should still work, but just by way of making it look more appealing, I can maintain that particular rotation to make it look more appealing. So that is the rotation I have. So I've been able to create an A sky. A sky is showing in our scene because we have the entire A sky inside our scene. It is showing because it is inside our scene. Now let us create a floor where we can have, let's say a grass carpet or maybe a picture that looks more like, let's say, bricks. So in creating a floor, I'm first of all going to create, this is just to tell you that I'm commenting, just to make it easier for you to read. It's now time for me to create a floor. I'm just like in your house, you have a very big compound. The compound can be your floor. Now we've been able to create our sky. So we want to have our compound, which is the floor, where we will put our things in there. So in creating a compound, there is another primitive which we can call to create a compound. If we want to create a box, we will call the A box to create the box. If we want to create a floor, we call another primitive which we call A plane. A plane. So now, this time around, I'm going to call a primitive called A plane. And what material am I going to use to create this particular plane? The material which I intend using for this particular one is maybe the green grass, like this particular grass. This grass Over here, I have brown grass, which is this one. There's a brown grass which I can use. This is a green grass which I can also use. There's another green grass which I can use. So maybe this is what I want my floor to look like, this particular grass. So I will create an A plane. The plane is just like maybe like a paper. You see how paper looks, it's plain. It's a little different from how a box looks like. A plane usually have a smaller depth compared to a box. So I would create an A plane, and now this time round, wrap that particular plane with a texture of a floor of a grass. But because I don't have a grass in my textures in here, I have only brown grass, but I want this particular grass, which is this one. It looks a little nicer. It means I need to introduce that texture in my assets just to help organize my files. So in doing that, I can now create another asset image, put it in the texture folder, and now call on that one. So that asset image, for instance, it is in the textures, and this time around, this is the image I want to call, grass 1. So I can type grass, and of course, it does pop up this one for me. And when I have grass 1 over here, I can call it maybe grass 1 again, which will make it easier for me to call it. Of course, I could still do the same by just typing source and typing the entire thing here in here, and it will work. But just by way of organizing it, I can just create it this way. So first of all, I'll create my floor by using the A plane. So it's a plane, A plane, then I press enter. So it means that primitive has been created for me, which is the A plane. Once that is done, then I can create maybe a way to, a plane usually, we have it in the form of, let's say, we can have a plane in a scale of, let's say, we can give it a scale. This is an attribute of a plane. A scale is equal to, we can give it a scale of, let's say, 100. So 100 on the x-axis, 100 on the y-axis, and on the z-axis, how thick that particular plane is. So if you take a piece of paper, you see the paper is very thin. So we can use 1 as the z-axis of that particular paper. So in that case, it means the plane is looking more like a rectangle. So when I have an A plane created like this, I'm going to save this one, go back again to my browser, and let's see what we have. So you can see this is a paper. This is just a simple plane. So now if I want to, there's a plane. I want this one to look more like a floor. A floor. For it to look more like a floor, it means I need to rotate it. I need to rotate it. I need to rotate or bring the top down. So it means I'm rotating it on the x-axis. So this is the x-axis. Let me use this picture so you get x, y, z. I want something that will make it very easy for you to understand. All right. From here, you can see this is the x-axis. This is the y-axis, and this is the z-axis. So the plane currently is like this. It's more like it's standing. So we can rotate it on the x-axis for it to fall down. So now it is looking like this. It's looking erected. when we rotate it on the x-axis, by possibly 90 degrees, we will have the plane falling flat, to look more like the red that we can see over here. So let's go back again. So we will try and rotate this particular what do you call it, A-plane on the x-axis, possibly in a negative direction, and that will fall in the x-axis negative part. So in doing that, we can have what we call the rotation attribute or component. And because we want to rotate it, we rotate it on the x-axis by maybe -90, and on the y-axis, let's say 0, and finally on the y-axis, on the z-axis to also 0. Currently, the plane looks like this. So now when we do that, it's going to fall down and look more like a plane. So you can see from here that you see now it has fallen down. You can see the plane has fallen down in a way. So it means we can build either our house on something that looks like this. We can build our house on a plane like this. This is how the plane is looking like. We just rotated, we just pushed the head down on the x-axis for it to fall flat. So now we can call this one as our ground. Now, generally, if you look at this one, from here, the scale that I was using was 100 by 100 and just 1 for the z-axis. I could have as well used 10 by 10. I could have as well used 10 by 10, and it will look more simpler. So you can see this is a plane. So in building a house on a plane like this one, it's quite too small. So it makes it a little, of course, it will take a little while to be able to build our objects in this particular scene. So it is better to have a plane that is so big in such a way that when we do, because it's big, anyone who wears the headgear, the VR headgear or headsets or goggles will not feel disoriented standing in our scene whenever we have the VR, when we are in a VR environment. Now, if I should wear the VR environment and I have it configured properly, you will see that I'll feel disoriented. I'll be suspending somewhere in the air because the plane is too small for me to stand on it. I might possibly be standing here, which in a way can disorient me the first time that I wear it. So for instance, in a VR environment, you are given a VR goggle, you wear it, and the moment you wear it, the first thing that you see is you are suspending in the air. That alone makes you feel disoriented. That is the reason why I increased the scale from 10 to 100. In better skills, it's better to use, let's say, 1,000 by 1,000. So that makes you look, makes things look so uniform, and you feel more oriented as compared to being disoriented in a very small, using a very small skill. The skill is just the normal thing that we have. Please, Jonathan and everyone, are we on the same page? If not, I can still go back again and explain. I hope we are not. I hope we are not sleeping. No. Okay. All right. Thank you. So now from here, what we can do is now add something we call a material to our plane. I'm first of all going to increase the scale so that we don't feel disoriented when we are in the VR environment. So I'll increase it to 1,000. Then over here, I'm going to add another attribute in there called material. So this is an attribute which we normally use in our what you call it, VR environment, is a frame. So material is just the texture that we possibly would want to wrap on our scene. I wanted us to use something we call the green grass, which I was using this particular grass. I want us to use this color grass. So that is the material. It's just like you wear, now that you are seated, you are wearing something, a cloth. So the cloth is being wrapped around you. So that is the material we are talking about. So for the plane, for instance, because we are creating the floor, we want to wrap a material called grass. And that particular grass is the picture that we have for it to look more realistic. So in this case, we have a material over here. Then for the material, it can take an attribute like SRC, like how we were creating the sky, SRC, for instance, and in there, we have what we call our grass. So in calling our grass, we can use this one. This is the grass I want us to call. So GRASS. So that is the grass I want us to use. So this is we are still on the plane. So the plane, we are just adding certain attributes to it for it to look more realistic, like a green grass plane, barefoot floor. So that is what I have in here. So, and in this case, if you look at it, the grass picture is quite small. You see how small the grass picture is. So we have to find a way to now increase or duplicate the grass to look, to repeat it so many times for it to fit this particular scale that we are using. The size is small. So we have to find a way to repeat it. So we use the repeat attributes in this case. So we are repeating it about 250 times on the x-axis and 250 times on the y-axis. That is what we are looking for. That is what we want to use this particular repeat of this particular grass for. You can see all these things are falling within the material environment. So once we have this one done, we can save our work and go into our browser and see how it looks. All right, so the green grass has not really come in here because the SRC, we are supposed to call the grass with an ID with a pound symbol, which is this one, or the hashtag. So that is how we call those IDs that we've created. We bring the hashtag over there. So if I refresh the page right now, you can see now we have our big sky and we have our green grass. And when I even go back, you see, as far as I go, because I've scaled it to 10,000 by 10,000, I still don't feel disoriented. I still feel like I'm in the VR environment. Please, am I making sense? Precious, if I am, please. Jonathan, I've not heard from you today. All right, Precious, but are you okay?
Yes, but then I would revisit this video again, this particular video after the class. Since it's a recorded version, I'll revisit it and take my time because this one is.
But if you have a question, please ask. If you didn't understand a portion, I can still go back again for us to continue. If you have a question. All right.
Okay, I'm following. The only thing is the texture that you share with us.
Okay.
And I'll start out.
All right. So that is about it. So now we've been able to create a sky, which looks like a sky, and we've been able to create green grass. Because we scaled it up big, we are able to see it more like a green grass and still, or more like a football field, and still don't feel disoriented in this particular environment. So it is from here that we will start creating. So it's like we are on a football field. Now we want to create maybe a table or a chair or anything of that sort. We can start creating all of them. All right, so if I go to the VR environment, it's the same scene that I'm going to see. And because I scaled it to a very high resolution, that is how come it looks a little more realistic in this case. All right, so that is the A plane. So when we create planes for objects that we feel are thin, most of the time our ground, we use the plane, A plane primitive to create our ground, and we add textures to it. So if I had wanted to use maybe a texture like the brown grass, I could have still called the B grass, instead of using the grass one. The grass one is this picture. So the brown grass is this picture. Let's try and use this picture and see how our scene will also look like. So instead of calling the GR grass, which is this one, let us call the brown grass, which is what? B grass. So I'll call it B grass over here. And when I refresh the page, just save the page and go back again, instead of seeing a green grass, I should be seeing a brown grass, which is repeated so many times. So you can see this is more like a hay brown grass, which we can have in our scene. So it's like we are more or less building, there's a plane. If you have a land, this could be a land where you can start building your stuff on. So that is it. But I want us to use the green grass, and I think that looks more beautiful. So I've reverted it back again to the green grass to have our scene look like this. The rotation is just to rotate the plane on the x-axis down. It was standing initially, we just let it fall on the x-axis. That is why we use the negative 90 degrees. So we just made it fall. That is, the moment it falls, the plane falls, and it means it's more like a land. Then I'm using a material. The material is what I'm going to use to wrap around the plane. The plane in itself, it came with a color of white. So I use a material component to wrap around this particular primitive, which is the plane. So the material, in wrapping around, I first of all will have to know the source of the material. And the material that I'm using is the grass. And I repeated it, used about 250 times. So because this has been stretched so many times, I have this repetition done. Of course, I could have also repeated it 50 times on the x-axis, 50 times on the y-axis. I don't have a value for the z-axis because we are not interested in the depth of the plane. All we want to know is the ground. We've created a ground. So if I have 50 by 50 and I refresh the page, you see that the grass, it doesn't look so beautiful, but it's still a grass, you know, but increasing it to 250 by 250 makes it looks a little more appealing compared to 50 by 50. So that is how this what is. Of course, you can still increase it to something else. Now, so that is how we are able to wrap materials or objects or textures around our primitives, like the A plane. So when we move on to the next one, for instance, assuming we want to create, let's say our Milotin. If we want to create our Milotin, the first thing that we can do is possibly create our let me see. So we have a floor created. So now let's try and create, let's say, a Milotin. Or better still, let's say our first chair. So I'm going to create just one chair with you guys, and maybe from there you can start. You can create the other chairs and make it look like that. So, friends, since you are back, if you want to create a chair, what primitive is what's the best primitive to use to create our chair? Yes, we want to create, yes.
Okay, a chair.
We don't have, the basic primitives are A plane, yeah, A plane, A box, A cylinder,
Oh,
A,
a square.
A,
A
no,
box.
A box rather, A box. Yeah, the thing is, the reason we call them primitive is, it is primitive because we can use it to create any objects that we want. So like a chair, for instance, if you want to have a simple chair, like let's say, let me go to my browser and let's see, let me just type a simple chair. Let's use this one as an example. If I want to create this particular chair, or even this chair, you see, I can create, this is actually a box. It's just that one part is longer than the other. This can also be a box. It's just that one part is longer than the other. So it means I can have an A box stretched in such a way that it will form the flat surface of this particular chair. If I want to create, this is also a chair. I can also create a chair like this one. So with this one, we can't use a primitive A box, but rather we can use a primitive like A cylinder. The cylinder looks like that. So we can have A cylinder with a depth of something small. So we can have a chair created using A cylinder for the top. Then maybe A box for the leg. That can be an example of creating a chair. So virtually all the chairs that you even see, the basic chairs that we can use the basic A-frame primitives to create them. They are primitive because they are the building blocks of creating some of these objects. So you only have to find a way to know which primitive will be easier to create set objects, and you can use it to create your objects. So now when I pick up this one, for instance, like the chair that I want us to create. So for instance, if I want us to create a chair, I can, first of all, let me just put up, try to create the chair. So for instance, in commenting, I said the commenting helps us know that this is what I'm trying to do. I want to create maybe chair one, maybe first chair. So in doing that, I can call what we call the A box to create the first part of the chair, which is the top part of the chair. Now, before I do all of this, just so I have all my objects in the scene correctly placed, I can create what we call an A entity to hold the position of where I want to put that particular chair. So the A entity is going to help us know where we want to put the chair. So I create an A entity, and within that, I'm going to give it a position. The position is just to help us know where to place the object that we are creating. So in this case, I possibly will put, let's say, -2. It means it will move to the left side, -2, then 0, let's say 0.5. Maybe it means it will be a little above the green grass, 0.5, and maybe 0. So it means it will be a little further away. And in terms of the rotation, because I want to create an A box, I can rotate it by using just the basic rotations that I have, which is 0.000 on all the axes. When I start creating it and I realize it's not so good, I can come back again and change the position. Now, when I come in here, so over here, inside the A entity, this is where I'm going to create my chair. So first of all, I will start creating maybe the seat of the chair, which is the top of the chair. So in that case, I begin by typing this. Of course, that is commenting. Let's see, this is the seat of chair, of the chair that I want to create. And in doing so, we said the best primitive to use for creating the chair is an A box. So I create an A box in here, and I give it a position. Sorry, I didn't create. So this is A box. Yes, so within, let me just first of all create the A box so that you appreciate it a little well. Let me just, now this time round, just like how we created the A plane and give it some other attributes, in the same way, I'm also creating the A box and also giving it a width, how wide it should be, how high it should be, and how deep it should be. It's a 3D object, so we need the X, Y, Z, which is very important. So in terms of how wide it should be, I want it to be a width of, let's say, 1. Let's say 1.01. With the box that we created, it has a width of 1. That is how come the box was a little small. So I have given it a width of 1. I'm going to give it a height of how high this particular box should be. If I use 0. Let's say 0.1 or 0.2, then it means this particular object, comparing it with how wide it is, this is quite small. So that is the height of that particular box. By default, if I don't specify the width, the height, and also the depth, it converts the box into 1, 1, 1. The width to 1, the height to 1, and the depth to 1. So it means we have a complete box. But because I want them to have different scales or values, that is why I'm giving it the width and the height and the depth too as well. So let's say 1.51. So when I have this one saved, and I go back, now I've created an A box, but I've given it a width, a height, and also a depth. So going back again to my scene and I refresh the page, in this case, you can see this is the box. You see, this is the box. You see, it is above the green grass. If I try to, let's say, see, it's a little above the green grass. So I'm trying to create a chair. See, this is a chair I'm trying to create and it is above the green grass. All right. Now, you see, this is where I will sit. So I rotated it. I gave a rotation of 0, 0, 0. If I had not given the width, if I have not given the width, the height, and the depth, it would have assumed the width of 1, the height as 1, and the depth too as 1. So in that case, it looks exactly like a box. So let me refresh the page. And when I come back, you see this is just a box. It looks just like a box. But because I've given it the right values, it has no option than to now look like the seat of the chair. So when I undo all these things and I come back again, you can see the object looks more like the seat. I can sit over here. Now there is this one other thing that I want us to create. So this is the seat of the chair. Now I want us to create the legs of the chair, the leg of the chair. But before I do that, we already have a texture which looks more like the tables that we have in our offices or at home. It looks more wooden. So an example of some of these is the wood texture. So we can have like this one. This one looks more like a wood. This one also looks more like a wood. So we can use this one or this one as our wood texture for this particular work. Any of them would work. If you don't like any of these pictures, then what you can do is to go to Google and type wood texture. There are so many of them online, which you can. These are all wood texture. So you can download any of them and use it for your work. If you want it to look more like this one, we can have this one as a wood texture. I can save this one, save this image and put it inside my A-frame work, inside a texture. Then I call it, let's say, wood, maybe wood 3. All right, so when I come back again to my VS Code, in this case, I have my A box. I have all these ones in there. So I can create, I want to now wrap the wood around the white chair that I have here. This white chair. Now it looks too white. I want it to look more realistic, like a chair. So I can wrap around it. But before I do that, I need to go into my texture and create the image tag to hold the location of that particular image that I want to bring on board, or the texture that I want to bring on board. So texture, and I called it as grass, sorry, wood. It is this particular wood. It might not be able to display properly over here. So let me select the first one, which is this one. Then that is the alternate. I will forget about it and give it an ID so that I can call the ID anytime. So I'll call it wood. All right, so this is what I'm going to call for the SRC for this particular white seat box chair. So I'll call it wood. Sorry, SRC. And this time round, I'll use the hashtag and call the name, which is wood. So with this one saved, when I go back again to the browser and refresh it, it's no more going to look like a white, it's no more looking like a white seat, but rather it's looking as a very nice table or chair, something that looks more like this. It looks a little better. Or I can still call this particular wood if I want. I can call that one. Whichever one appeals to us, we can call it and we will wrap around it. So now this is how it looks like. So this is the seat of the chair. So the next thing that we have to think about is the legs for that particular chair. So in creating that, I can create a comment and call this one as legs. And in this case, from here, if I'm creating the leg tool, the best primitive to use is also going to be a box. And also change the height, the width, and so on. So for instance, I can create an A box in here. Then in terms of how wide it should be, I want it to be maybe not so wide. So this is the height that we have. So how wide? Maybe the width, I would want something that is quite small because that is for the position of this particular object. So in this case, I can have it as, let's say 0.1. Then how high, which is the height, I can also have a value like, let's say, height. If I say a wakakra, so we would want to use maybe let's say 1.2 or 1.5, any of them that we want. Let's say 1.05. Then the next thing I will look out for is the depth. How deep should it be? And we can have a depth of 0.05. 0, 1. So that could be the depth of our chair. So if I refresh this one, so there's the first leg of the chair. And I'm putting it, let's see where we will put it. You see, where we put it, it's directly up, it is inside the what do you call it? The where we will sit. So we have to find a way to position it correctly. So in doing that, we can now, I always have to refresh and move the object. So what I can do is to give a position to this one. So first of all, let me give a position to the seat so that I can move it to the right place for us to see the object itself. So position, we can position it in a way that we can have, let's say 0, let's say 0, 0.5, 0. We have this one a little above. Let's see if we can go around it. All right, so we can position it as in so many ways. So let's move around. Let's give a position for this particular object too as well. So A box, A width, let's give it a position. So the position is helping us to position the object that we have actually created. And that is where the work is, being able to know where to place an object at any point in time. So I'm giving it a position of 0.45, and let's say 0.03, and let's say for a Z of 0.04. So that's the position I want to place this particular one. So I come back again, I'll refresh the page. So it is obvious that I see the chair this is one of the legs of the chair. It is at this particular side. So the next thing we can do is to also position the other leg. In fact, the positioning is what is actually where the work is. So it's not the leg that we are creating. So I can copy this one and paste it as, there are 4 legs. So these are the legs. So this is how wide I want it to be. So we are going to, it's the positioning that we are going to tweak in a way so that it falls at the right places. So if this one is negative 0.45, we can make this one as positive so that it comes out of it. And if this one is negative already, so we can make this one also negative. So it falls at the back of the chair, facing us. So at the other side, they are of the same position. It's just that one is in the negative side and one is the positive side. And this one too, we can have one on the negative side. That is one is on the left, the extreme left, and one is in front of the left. So the position would just be about the same. And it is just this one that is going to change. The Z-axis, how close it is. So refreshing this page and going back again to our browser, we can have something looking like this. So we have 3 of the legs coming in. Then the final one is eating into the other. So let's try and get that one out. So which is this one of the chairs. So this chair is actually being in the same position as this one. So when we bring it out, we save it. We come back to our browser, we should be able to see all the 4 legs of the chair. So these are the 4 legs of the chair. We don't want the legs to look white. So what can we do? We have to wrap a material around it or a texture around it. We can use the wooden material as we already have. So in doing so, what we can do is we create an SRC, which is the source of the picture which we want to wrap around it. And that's one we are using the wood, which is this one. So we type the hash wood. So I think hash mute. We want the legs not to look like white, but actually we want it to look more like brown, using that particular brown texture. So this is for each of the legs. So when I save this one and I go back again and refresh the page, sorry, let me save it properly. All right, because we've used this one, let's use a color of brown so that we fall in the same. Now, for each of these IDs, you can only use them as one time. So let's use brown so let's say a color of, we use a color which is looking more like brown. Can call it brown, and that should work. So let me use a color of brown. IDs can be called one time in our work because they are unique in the work. I'm using a color of brown, a color of brown, a color of brown. All right. So this is looking a little more like a chair. It's just the positioning that you have to think through it. So at this point, this is where we are. Eventually I'm going to end here. It's 9 o'clock. I hope that we'll be able to create something similar to this one. So you can see this is the table, the chair, and so on, all of these here. So it's the positioning that is very important. So what I would want you to do is to create this table and this chair before we meet again. Then when we are done, we can move on to the next one. So now we are virtually creating this one. So just the same way, find a way to position the chair properly and create this table and this chair. It's the same thing that we have been doing. Then from there, you'll pick it up. Yes, the last time we agreed that this would be is the project for the course. So you have to be a little creative. Don't use the same texture as I'm using. Use a different texture. So I would be going through the practicals with you. Try and create this and this. The next time we meet, we'll continue and with the creation of maybe we're able to do the green grass, which is this one. The next time we meet, we'll create and position these things properly. All right. Is there any question?
No.
Yes, sir.
My own, this thing is not running. When I write the code and I try to run it to see.
Okay. Can you share your screen with me so I can see what you've done?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So now let's go back again to the VS Code. All right. So you have your body. I'm requesting for remote access. Please give me access.
Okay.
All right. So from here, this is the scene. Everything that we are creating is going to fall within the scene. And earlier on, I was saying that the A asset that we have here is just a way of organizing our files. So it doesn't necessarily have to be inside the scene. So with that, we can move it out of the A scene and put it somewhere inside the body of our work, inside the body over here. So from here, you can see you've perfectly created your A scene. But there is one thing that you have not done. Before you continue, you need to be able to reference this particular file, which is the A-frame. The creation of the A box is possible because of this file, the A-frame.js file. And you need to find a way to put it inside the head tag. So in doing that, I said the head tag. So this is the beginning of the head tag. This is the closing of the head tag. And we don't have anything like a rectangle. Okay, well, it's not really a primitive. We have a circle, which you can use. So this is the head tag, this is the head tag. The script has to be inside the head tag. So it means I can either put it here, here, or here. Or even I can come at the back here and create a new space and type scripts. The moment I type scripts, I just press enter. And it will create the opening and the closing tag for me. Now, once I have the script, what I need to do is inside the script, I need to reference where the file of that particular script is. In this case, it is the aframe.js. So I'll type src. src stands for source. Press enter. Then inside it is equal to in quotes. Then the file is scripts. The folder is called scripts. Okay. I think your version, you might have to call the script using the /. So you use /script. Let me be very sure. Okay, don't worry. Let's still maintain what we are doing. So we have scripts. Scripts is a folder, and in there we have aframe.js. So it means we have been able to reference the script that is going to help us create all those primitives inside our A scene. So this has been done. So the next thing is to go into our browser and try to type localhost to see if it's going to show. And we need to have that icon at the bottom here. So we refresh the page. Let's see, your server is running, I believe. Okay. There might be an error somewhere. Let me check again from your code. Okay, but for now, let me just, I'm trying to debug your error to see if there is any. Let me just get it sorted. Now I'm compelled to see if your A-frame file is actually correct. Let me see. All right, just a minute. Let me just. You see, the IntelliSense for mine is working. I'm sure a portion of your code is broken. See, even if I don't type it, it comes. Then this one is a scene. All right. So if I compare it with this one, let me see what is actually different. Something is not so right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy everything here and paste it inside your own.
Okay.
So I'll save this one and close this one and delete this one. Okay, so virtually this is, okay, so I think you call it a table with something, something, and that should work. So when we go back again to our browser, we should see, yes, so we have it here. So it means we are ready to go. So I saw that you created an A box. Let me just do this with us before we go. So A box, sorry. A box. You can also have A sky, like all I talked about. So A box in there. We can give it a color. Then we can call it brown. Before I was giving it a width. By default, it makes the width, the height, and everything 1111. So if you are, we go the width to be to, let's say, how wide it should be. Let's say 1. How the height, you can give it a height of, let's say 1 is big, so let's say 0.1. Then the depth, you can also give it a value of, let's say 0. Let's say 0.2. So when we save this and we go back to our scene, refreshing on the page, moving back, because we gave it a brown color, see, it's been able to do something for us to see. Forgive me, because the internet keeps lagging, but at least you have an idea what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Okay, so that's it.
Mm.
All right, so
okay.
Basically, so that is it. So you can take your time and go through this one if there are some few things. So let's try and create those small things. Try and position it small. We will build it from ground up.
Okay.
And then at least I'll expect you to try and use different, add other things to it. But so try it. And since we are all here, let me quickly say this one. What I intend doing is I will teach lecture 2. When I'm done, lecture 3, 4, and 5. I'll put in every lecture in 5 lectures. I would want you to put up maybe some write-up. I would want so that I'll be able to mark and award marks to it. So each of you will do a presentation on at least one of the lectures. Then we will use this practical session as another mark for you guys. You will go and continue and complete it and bring it. And that will be done for the what do you call it? VR, AR. Depending on how fast you are, I'll try and also incorporate AR into it. All right. Thank you very much. Do we have any questions? Okay, so we seem to be okay. Let's call it an evening. I'm going to end the video and we'll meet again. So please try and let me know the available times possible so that we'll know these are the times that we're meeting every time so that we don't miss any of the lectures. I want us to finish by end of this month. All right, thank you.
Okay. Doug, we said Tuesday and Monday and Tuesdays.